Ansu here, and in today's video we're going to have some fun with pens. And as you can see, I have quite a collection. Yes, I am a pen lover, always have been, always will be, and I have collected and tested out pens over decades. And as a teacher, you start out with your standard red pen, and my favorite go-to red pen is by Uniball I Micro. And I like these ink pens. This one is quite old, so I just broke the lid, but I don't tend to use these pens any longer, so this one is going to be gifted to my dad. So really old. I haven't been teaching for about I would say 7 years or so, and I think I bought this pen even way before that. So this pen has been serving me really well. They last a really long time, depending on how much marking I did. I think I could go a whole month on one of these pens, and then I did a lot of kind of marking kids' books and their tests on a weekly basis and things like that, so it got a lot of use from me. So this one is going to go in the donate bin, because I don't really use red pens any longer. And then we have, if we start to talk about color and what is the essential color that you need in your studio, I always try to recommend to my students that you don't need to buy the rainbow when you start out. Choose your favorite color and start out with that. But in any artist's setup and studio, I think the most essential color to own in terms of pens and art product is black, and then the opposite of that is white. So I've done a video on all of the white mediums that you need to kind of start out with. So things like acrylic paint in white, you can get your different kinds of pens, Posca pens, paint pens and things in white as well. There's always a need for a good quality white pen, but white is something that you highlight with, so that's your light factor. But when it comes to black pens, as an artist, for me, I have different uses for my pens. I'm a journaler first and foremost, so I make notes a lot, I make lists, I journal out gratitude, I draw. When I draw, I actually start drawing with a pencil so that I can kind of play with the design that I'm busy with, or the image or the portrait that I'm drawing. And so I have a variety of pencils that I have collected over time, and these also last quite some time, and as you can see, they have been used a lot over time. I even have a little bit of a hard charcoal pencil that broke off, that I placed in here. I just need to sharpen it, but this is basically what it is. And because I don't like the feel of charcoal, I'm very sensitive in my hands, so I don't like the feel of charcoal, the dust and things. So this pen has a smooth feel to it because it has a covering over that charcoal, and it is a Rolf's woodless charcoal pencil, and it's the hard one. And what I like about this is I can use my sharpener to sharpen it, and so I can do little fine lines and things with this, and we will be testing that out. So just when it comes to charcoal, I know that you get various types of charcoal, but I really don't like the messiness of that. I'm very much a paper artist, so I like paper, and charcoal tends to mess with white paper a lot. So I kind of stay clear from kind of charcoal type products because I use white paper a lot. That is one of the aspects that you need to be mindful of. What you do in your studio, what kind of art you are pursuing, what kind of hobby you're doing, will determine the tools that go with that. So not everything that I mention here is for everybody, and that's one thing that I can recommend as a teacher is very important. You have a personal taste and preference in terms of what mediums you would like. And when I was growing up, I couldn't decide what type of art medium was kind of my thing. And then later on as an adult, when I really started to dig into art and studied it and researched it, I found the term mixed media, and so I am declaring myself a mixed media artist, or I have done so for quite some time now, because I like mixing mediums and testing out how they respond to each other and what effects you can create with it, and there's no rules. And that is what my personality type is driven by, is the aspect of freedom. So I want that freedom to make choices, and today I might be into drawing just with my charcoal pencil, tomorrow I want paint pens, or the day after that I want to use my acrylics or watercolor, etc. So I haven't included watercolor paint in here, but I have included watercolor pens or brush pens, and we will play with that a little bit as well and test things out. So when it comes to pencils, you have different varieties of pencils, but they're basically tones that go into your blacks. And so my drawing pencils set aside, I'm not really going to dig into reviewing those, but I just wanted to mention them. So you start out when you want to draw and so on with your pencils, right, which is basically in essence that darker color or black or tones of gray. And then we look at just your black, different types of black pencils. So I have set aside a couple of pencils that I kind of extracted from my stash, and so we will talk about that and how I use them, and we will test those out. So there's a variety there. Then we have our pens, and as you can see, I like also the variety because they bring me different things, and we're going to talk about that and what that does for us. You will see that I've included my glasses because as I get older, these pens and their descriptions get kind of illegible. So I realized just before I started, I needed my glasses just to kind of zoom into all of the descriptions of these pens, because they are all different and they do different things and they will respond different in your art expression. Then we have our range of markers. So we've got pens, and then we've got markers and brush pens, things like that. And then we also have other mediums that I also just wanted to take a look at. Now, which brand you prefer doesn't really matter. When you start out, go just basic. And the things that I really have found work for me, I don't really go for a harsh black in terms of black paint. I like a soft black, which is kind of going into the brown, so it's really a nice color to work with in terms of preparing a background if you want to really bring in depth into it. So remember, when you go lighter, that means you're bringing the light aspect into your artwork. When you go darker, you bring in more depth. And you can use all of these pens and markers and things to line your artwork, which makes it pop and brings things to the forefront. And so that's another tip. Right. Then we have a local brand in South Africa called Dala. And this company, I actually a couple of years ago met with one of the reps of this company, and he told me that the guy who started it all was a teacher like me, an art teacher. And so I really respect this company a lot. They make products for schools and for kids, so they make sure that their products are safe and non-toxic, which I really like. I like that aspect. Right, so I can really recommend, if you're local to South Africa, that you try out Dala. Dala's got a range of products, and they have things like charcoal and impasto paint and things like that, so more artist grade products as well. I love their mediums that they offer. I constantly use the gel medium. I've tested out the acrylic matte glaze medium as well. Really love both of these, and so I can recommend that. I also use other mediums in that range. And then this specific black acrylic ink, black acrylic paint, I have had for, I would say, more than a decade, and there's still some in here and it's still usable. So I can really recommend this brand. If you have cracks in your little tube, then your paint might dry out over time, but I still have a couple of these. I haven't bought Dala acrylic paints in a while, but I used to paint canvases with these, and that's why I kind of moved over to my Americana paint brand. So I've been collecting that. Now that's one thing I want to talk about. Collecting all of these things happens over time. Don't expect to go to a shop, that depends on your budget of course, but to go and buy all of these things all at once. When you go shopping and you browse through your stationery shop or your art store, choose one product. Say for instance you're going to try out something you saw in the video and you buy one pen, and then you go home and you see how much you can do with it. What are the different things that you can do with that one pen? Look at the pricing of that pen, the quality of the pen, the brand, and then test it out and see if you like it, if it works for you. If it doesn't, then please don't go and buy the range. So if you see when you're in the store that you get these in different nib sizes and you want to try them all out, I would say that if you're not going to be happy with that brand, you're going to lose a lot of money unnecessarily. So start with one, test it out. If you're happy with that, see over time, give it the time test as well, and see if over time you reach for it on a frequent basis. If not, that's another consideration. If you're not going to use it a lot, don't invest in the range and buy all the nibs. Right, some of these pens can be quite pricey. One of them I think cost about 60 Rand locally, which is quite high for a pen. Most of them range between 30 Rand to 50, or somewhere in the 50s, which can be pricey. So more artist grade pens will be a little bit more pricey. And then you get your cheaper versions as well, which is just as good and can do a lot of the jobs that the other ones can do as well, and they just might not last as long, but they are good quality nonetheless. Right, so when you talk about paints, it doesn't really matter. Go for kind of student grade to start out with, and then later on when you feel like you have progressed in your art making, then try out some artist grade paints before you invest in the whole range of that. But because I can promise you, if you like a product, you want to go deeper into it, and I have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15, probably 30, nearly 100 different tubes of these Americana paints that I've collected over time. So some of them I replace on a regular basis because I use them a lot, like my skin tone color palette and whites. White paint is something that you always need, and black is also that essential that you're always going to need. I work sparingly with my black, but it is a basic color that you need in your stash for various reasons. Right, then we can go into inks as well. I'm just going to mention three inks that I have in my stash. The Distress Oxide Black Suit is great for stamping. I really like this. I use it a lot. Sometimes I use my date stamper with this because it's just handy. You can blend with it. There's a lot of things that you can do with your Distress Oxide, so I'm a great fan of the oxide inks. I don't really own a lot of the normal distress inks, not a great fan of those. I don't find a lot of use for those inks, so it depends on what you do and what kind of art you're making. So for me, my preference is the oxide instead of the normal distress inks. Alright, they pop a little bit more on a page for me. Then you get your Tsukineko all-purpose ink. I have a couple of these. I don't own the whole rainbow. I don't tend to go for them a lot. I do use the Vegas Gold ink in my art making, so I really love this one, and I have used up a couple of pots of these, so I can recommend the Vegas Gold. And having the black can help you if you have one of these kind of pens that gives you that old world feel, and you can do calligraphy with this, but you can also draw with this. So I haven't really dug into that kind of drawing as yet, and I'm going to kind of test things out and play a little bit because I have the tools. I've had this for a really long time. I actually have two other options as well. I have this one that I bought overseas. It's kind of like a fountain pen that you can fill up. Just want to open it up. So it has different kind of nibs that I keep close by in a little container, and this is kind of a broad one, and then you can fill it up with the ink and you can have that ink pen, little fountain pen that you can use. But it's a very cheap version, and I just thought it a fun thing to buy overseas, and I have never really used it. So there it is. Perhaps I will dig into that and make some videos. And then I've got these two, which is just very old school kind of little I don't really know what to call them, but anyway, so we will test that out in this video as well. We'll go for the black and play around and see if we can do some drawings with it. I have done a little drawing that I made a little kit with recently, but I used a blue drawing ink by Dala, so you can also try out Dala's drawing inks. Right, and then we have something that's kind of a standard thing if you want to do stamping. It's an acid-free permanent waterproof archival ink, and it's jet black, and this is basically the only black ink pad that I own, and I just go for Ranger. And so I've got two Ranger products here, which is kind of well known and it's good quality, and that's all I really use in terms of inks. Right, so we've got the inks covered. Then if we look at different brands, the brands that we're going to test out today is we're going to look at Faber-Castell, and there's a variety of pens that you might not have known you can actually dig into and use. This one is actually supposed to be over here. Right, so Faber-Castell, I've got a couple there that I'm going to talk about. And then we've got Sakura Pigma pens. This one is a Pigma Graphic 1. And then we have a couple of other nib types. These are all archival ink, and so we're going to look at those. And then there's also a jelly roll pen by the same company that I have in my stash, and we will test that out together with those. Then we have these artist grade pens. I really like Unipen. I have my sister introduced them to me. She is a fine art illustrator as well, and have done lots of illustrating children's school books and all kinds of things for many years, and so she's quite particular in terms of which pens she uses. And these Unipen pens, she kind of introduced me I would say 2 decades ago nearly, and really have been using these a lot. So I've got a whole variety. These are my go-to drawing pens if I do illustrations and things, or I design something from scratch. These days I have a tablet with a digital drawing program and a digital pen, which I use to kind of develop my art from scratch, which makes my life a lot easier, but I do like the hands-on method as well. But these are my go-to pens. These are my favorites. I basically bought these Micron pens because they are kind of a similar type of pen, and just to test them out and see which ones I prefer, but these are my go-to pens. Right. And then you also, in terms of brush pens, the Micron pens come in a brush version as well. I'm not a big fan. The nib is a little bit too long for me and too floppy. And then the Unipen, again, I like the brush nib. It's really not too floppy and all over the place, and it gives me more control. Right, so when it comes to calligraphy and fancy writing, then you want control, and this pen really gives that to me. Then you also have your brush pen in terms of your koi pens. So these are good quality, and they are a dye stuff ink, a water-based. It's a graphic artist for designers, illustrators, students, architects and cartoonists use these pens, and it's also by Sakura. So that pen actually should go over here with that brand, so it's the same brand. And then you also get the brush pen in the Faber-Castell as well, which I've been using a long time, and I started out with these many moons ago together with basically the sepia. So these are the 2 Pit Artist pens that I was introduced to also by my sister, and I think I've been using these for probably 15 years or longer, and I really love these pens. And I don't really have the rainbow in the rest of the Pit Artist pens because I don't tend to use it a lot. These I use a lot for lining and blending and bringing in depth into my artwork. So these were my go-to pens. So when it comes to Faber-Castell and your Pit Artist pens, it really depends on what you want to do, but I will never, I think, really dig into buying the whole rainbow if I'm only going to use these two colors. So there's reasons why I only use them. I have about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 12 kind of blues and pinks and yellows and greens in terms of the bit artist paints, but I find that I don't really reach for them a lot. Right, so we have that. Then next up, our Unipin, also that range has some other quality pens as well. We're going to test that out. I just bought a couple of new ones today. I have used the Signo broad pen before, but I haven't had one in my stash for a long time. The Uniball I Micro is basically a pen that my husband really loves, but I used to use these together with the red and the blue when I was a teacher, so I'm well familiar with these pens and they're good quality. And my kind of pen, I really like the ink kind of pens. Right, then we have Pilot, and Pilot makes a wonderful wide range of pens. As you can see, I've got a couple of different ones, and these ones are calligraphy pens, and they are lettering pens, and I just want to see, for calligraphy it says, and then just want to see if it has any other information on it. Not really. Right, some of the writing is in ink. It says it's pigment ink. Right, and then we're going to test out what these pens are going to do for us. And these pens have been really old. I've done kind of not just calligraphy for the fun of it, but also invitations and things for weddings and so on. So I did that when I was still a teacher, made invitations for the kids or cards and things. And I'm a card maker, so doing calligraphy inside of cards or on the outside even have been something that I've done for a very long time. So I've owned these pens for, I would say, nearly 2 decades or longer, and I haven't replaced or needed to replace them. They come in different nibs and sizes, and I have a 10, a 20 and a 30, and I think I need to buy a couple of more of these and get back into my calligraphy making. Right, so there we go. Then I tested out, or I'm going to test out, the Pilot drawing pen. So as with the Unipin and the Micron pens, these would be your drawing pens, and they would come in different nibs and sizes. I just decided to go for the number 5. The barrel of the pen is blue, but it is a black pen, as you can see there, so you can distinguish between your Pilot, your Unipin and your Micron. They've got different designs. So this is blue, this is black, and this has got this kind of khaki color on the outside. Right, then we have the Pilot V pen, which is kind of like a fountain pen. So I've bought this today. It's a very expensive one. It's the one that's over 60 rand, and so I'm going to test it out. I hope it was worth it. But because I'm a Pilot pen fan, and I normally use, this is my standard go-to pen. It's a pure liquid ink. You get it in 2 nib sizes. I prefer the 0.5, but I've also used the 7. So the 7 has got a gold type font on it, and the 0.5 is just black with silver. But I really go for this pen a lot. I write with these pens. They never let me down until the ink is finished. So from start to finish, it's smooth sailing for me with the Pilot pure liquid ink. So I can really recommend these pens. I think they go for about 30 to 40 rand. Right, so we've got those two. Then we go for kind of cheaper pens. These are the fine liners. It looks like a little brush nib, so we're going to test it out. Perhaps it will give us a little bit of fun with brush lettering. And then this is a Pilot CD DVD marker, so it can write on a couple of things, and it's extra fine, and I've had this for some time. And then we have a Pilot super color marker, and it's also extra fine, permanent. It's permanent type. Right, so, and it's a UF, it says on the outside. Right, I've had that for a while as well. And then today I bought this one. It's also this is a pen towel, so that ends the pilot range. Then I've got 2 Pentel pens. This one is green label and it is no xylene in it. And then what else? I think that's all the information. Okay, it's a permanent marker, indelible, fine point, and that's all the information on there. Alright, so we're going to test this guy out. And then we have our Pentel liquid gel ink, and it's a 1-point ball pen. So we're going to test that one out. Most of these pens you will probably be able to find on Amazon as well, but they are available in South Africa, so that's where I'm based, and I found all of these in my local stationery store. Then we have, and I have to carefully pronounce this one, Xoxo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, but it's art line, fine liner 0.4 with a really fine nib, so I'm really looking forward to that. I really like the fine nib pens. Then there's an Artline 854 medium overhead projection marker, so these would be indelible permanent ink. As a teacher I used to use these if I didn't want my transparencies to kind of be smudging all over the place. Then Artline Supreme permanent marker as well, so nice kind of it's kind of smelly. I really don't like the smelly kind of inks because, or ink pens or markers, because they disturb my hormone system and so I don't really like that. You can get high on that pen. And then Sharpie on the other hand is also one of those that this one the branding kind of rubbed off, so just wanted to show you what a Sharpie pen looks like. So I've got a couple of Sharpies, but I don't tend to go a lot for these. This is a silver metallic permanent marker, but they're really smelly, and I really don't like smelly things in my studio because they can be toxic. And so I know that Sharpie is a great marker if you want to mark things like labels and things, and it's permanent, but because of the smelliness I personally tend to stay clear of Sharpie in general. Right, and then we have another watercolor marker. It kind of has a brush point, but it's a hard marker, it's not a soft brush point, and it is watercolor, so you can play with these. And then we go into Stabilo, and I've got 2 different ones. So you've got your fine point, 0.88 fine 0.4, so it says Stabilo 0.88 fine 0.4, and there's no other information on there. And then this one says Stabilo pen 68, and that's basically that. So this one has kind of more of a brush nib, and you can do a little bit of brush lettering with this one, which is great. Right, and that's my range of pens that we're going to test out today. So I just wanted to introduce them first. So this was the introduction. So we have a couple of brands we're going to look at. We've got our paint markers as well. So Unipen or Uni is part of the same company as the Unipen pens and the Uniball, and so great pen range that they have. So I've got different kinds of these paint pens. Let me just see. This is the chisel shaped 8-point millimeter, and it's a black. That's basically all it says. Right, and then we have 24, so it's a 1.8 to 2.5 bullet shaped, like that one. Makes nice dots on your artwork, which I'm a fan of. This one is your 0.9 to 1.3, and it's also bullet shaped. I haven't used this one, this is a new one. So it's basically the same as this. I can put that one away. This one I've used. Right, so we've got that. And this is one of my favorite ones because it has a sharp point. I really like this one. It's also, it says bullet shaped, but the nib is a little bit sharper. And this is a 0.7. Right, so I can recommend this one. Really like the size as well of this one. Right, but I also think it's a little bit more expensive than the rest for some reason. Right, and then we have Solo Goya Aqua Paint Marker with a nice brush nib, so we're going to have fun with this one. I think I have this one in white as well. And then just in general, we've got a dual tip art marker by Montmartre. Right, so that one can do brush lettering, and then we've got a nice for coloring in broad nib. Okay, so those are your pens. Now we're going to see what they're going to do for us. So I will see you in the next section, and we're going to test these out on paper. Before we start testing out all of our pens, I wanted to mention paper, because without pens, or without paper, we can't use our pens, and that's what paper is made for, is to be written on and art kind of making. And so we've got a wonderful range of choices out in the world, and I just wanted to kind of let you know what I use in my stash, or what I have available. And my go-to paper is a acid-free, non-toxic, very plain, eco-friendly type of paper. It's 160 gram, and it's photo-friendly, so I can use it for documenting my memories as well, with photos and things. But for art making, I really like this. It's uncoated, and it's very smooth. I like the smoothness of the paper. And the 160 GSM, if we talk about the weight of the paper, can go easily through my printer without damaging the spools of the printer too much. And I do a lot of printing, so that's my go-to. But I can also recommend, if you want to save just a little bit on paper, you can go for the 120 GSM weight as well, because you can also put that through your printer. It's a little bit more luxurious than your 80 gram copy paper. And copy paper, I want you to kind of think out of the box, that copy paper can also be used to make art. Make your notebooks and your journals and use just copy paper. The moment that you add a medium, I've said it before, then that kind of surface, doesn't matter if it's recycled cardstock or paper or anything that you add your medium to, will help the paint mediums to grip to that, especially if you use gesso. So either a good quality gesso, I really can recommend the PBO Studio acrylics. I really love this. Love the fact that it's in a tube like this instead of a container. So if Darla is watching, please bring out the gel medium in a tube like this one. I would really love that. Gives you a little bit more control. Right, so when it comes to paper, I'm not a paper snob in terms of art making. I can make art on any surface, but I really prefer this brand. So I've got some offcuts that I'm going to use in today's experiment and review. And so then I just want to talk about what we have available locally. I just bought Prime Art, their craft pad, so it's 175 GSM in weight, so that's your weight of your paper. There's 20 sheets in this, and it wasn't too expensive, so I was happy to see that they do have a craft version. I'm not a fan of the craft color paper, but I want to challenge myself in terms of art journaling to dig into using that a little bit more. And then also the Prime Art, I feel like was a little bit more pricey than other brands. I have also used in the past and still have in my stash the Amadeo Mixed Media brand. This is a smaller pad. They are really good quality, and this is good for pen and ink, charcoal, collage, pencil, pastel, Conte, acrylic and watercolor. So it's a nice go-to paper for everything, and both my sister and I really like this brand, and we've been using it for some time. And this one is a 200 GSM, which is a nice in-between kind of weight. It's not too heavy cardstock. You will be able to make a journal from this if you want to, so can recommend the Amadeo brand. Then today I decided to grab Fabriano a little bit as well, and it was a little less pricey than the Prime Art, which I was happy to see. And this one with its green cover says it's start drawing paper, It's called Start Drawing. Start your creative journey, 30 sheets, so more than 20. 160 GSM, so I was thinking of printing my art on this. It's a really good quality and it's smooth. The Amadeo is a little bit more like watercolor paper, a little ridgy. It's got little kind of marks in the paper, so it's textured a little bit more, which is not kind of my preference. I really like smooth paper, like in the El Toro brand that I normally use. Right. And what I like about this brand that I normally find at my art store is you get it in a 120, a 160, a 200, I think it comes in 240 as well. I think you can up to 350 or something like that. I'll just check, but there's a variety of weight available in these really nice smooth cardstocks. I use this for my scrapbooking as well. Right, so Fabriano 160, nice and smooth, but heavy enough that I think you can really try your watercolor with it as well. I think if you add a little gel medium, it will be able to take that. It's really good weight. It's eco-responsible, FSC certified paper for drawing, has a resolutely green spirit, ideal for graphite, charcoal, pastel, color pencil, marker, pen and ink. So we're going to test that out. So I'm going to take out one of these sheets for us to do our experimenting on. Right. The one side's a little bit more grainy than the other side, feels to me. Okay. So that's Fabriano. Then this one, let's try, because pens react differently to different kinds of paper, and I know with the ink pens also sometimes it doesn't really glide on more textured paper. We'll see. Then this one is Water. It's called Water by Prime Art, made with hot pressed watercolor paper, acid free, natural white, smooth satin finish, and it is 300 GSM, and it is just amazing. I really like this cardstock. It's really heavy duty, so I'm not gonna play with that in our experiment today. Just wanted to let you know I really like that. It's really nice and smooth. Then your multimedia, so it's for ink, charcoal, pastel, graphite and acrylic. It's a medium tooth, 200 GSM, so I would say 200 is a great kind of weight to go for. Let's just try this one as well, and then obviously our craft color. Let's go for one of these. So we have a nice variety of paper as well to work with. And then sometimes you have the need for tracing paper. You can print on these sheets. They are 50 GSM, so they're a little lightweight, and I would suggest that you add them to a piece of cardstock with some washi tape. Just fold the washi tape over at the top so it doesn't split in your printer and cause a paper jam, and then push that through with a nice heavy duty, like a 160 GSM weight paper beneath it. Because it's really flimsy, it can cause a paper jam in your printer, so I wouldn't suggest just trying to put that through in general. So make sure that you washi tape it to a cardstock and then push that through your printer, and you will probably have a better experience if you want to print on the tracing paper. Right, so we've got a couple of options here in terms of paper. So Fabriano, Prime Art craft paper, and two other brands as well. I think what we're going to do is we're going to cut these all in half, so we've got the same sizes we're working with. A little bit smaller size is a little bit better to handle. And then we've got options. You can already start a journal with that. And then we've got our plain cardstock. Right. I would say that most of these are interesting to see when you wet them, that the color tone comes through in the ink. So the first one, the fine liner, had a bluish tone, as well as the Pilot V pen medium, and this one had a kind of yellow and green, the V ball, Pure Liquid ink, a little bit of a greenish color coming through there with a little bit of yellow, but that was on the gesso, and then on the gel medium you couldn't see that green. It was basically just tones of grey coming through, but there's definitely a little bit of blue in the fine liner as well as the Pilot V pen, so those have kind of a blue undertone, and then this one more pinkish, more red to pink undertone there, and then a little green in the Pilot V ball. So the sign pen leans more to your pink undertone or reds, and then this one goes more green, Pilot V ball 0.7 and 0.5, which is my favorite go-to pen. Interesting that I now see what it does on the gesso, and then it definitely reacts differently on the different types of prep paper. So you've got your gesso, your gel medium, and just unprepped paper or cardstock. And then interesting, the Pilot drawing pen I found was excellent quality, really liked it, and interesting to see that the Pilot drawing pen had a big bleed on the gesso, very much less on the gel medium. That's very interesting. Mostly if they bleed here, then it's kind of consistent, but in this instance it's kind of like it responds like a permanent. So what I wanted to say was that the drawing pen in the Pilot range is really good quality. I really liked how it the glide over all the three surfaces was really good, and I was surprised to see that it really didn't blend a lot in terms of the gel medium, which is good, but then more so on the gesso, which is interesting. Okay, so lots of things that you can learn by doing it this way, and then I can definitely see that my Pilot lettering pen number 30 needs replacement. It started out well on the gesso and then progressed to become lighter, which is a sign that the pen is reaching the end of its days, so I need to replace that number 30. But as I said, I've had these pens for many years, so it doesn't surprise me. They've stood the test of time, and I had a lot of use out of them, so I need to replace that one. The number 2 probably just close to that. 10 is still fine, and you can see the nib, how it changes in terms of size. So there's a lot of things that we can learn here. And then let's see bleed through. None of these pens has a lot of bleed through, so for all the Bible journalists out there, stick to your Pilot pens. They do well in terms of your gel medium. The first one, the Pilot Supercolor Ultra Fine, doesn't bleed at all, so that's a permanent pen. And then we get to the drawing pens, which responds well. There is a little bit of a bleed there, but it might be that there was some residue left from my first test on the gesso, but it looks like the pen didn't really move there, and there's no real bleed through of any of these pens. Even the calligraphy pens did really well, so that's a good test so far. And then we'll move over to just testing on normal paper all of the rest, and I'm not going to continue with the gel medium and gesso test. You can then try out these pens by prepping your paper with different mediums and see how the pens respond. That's the lesson for today. Right, so I'm going to put these to the side then so they can dry.